So this lesson is actually a very basic lesson. The most important thing for you to internalize in this process, well, for all of you, of course, is that we are going to do a series of movements. And the point of the movement isn't to master the movement. The point of the movement is to use it as a way to observe yourself. So this class is because I've been studying a lot of stuff around the core and breathing the last couple of weeks and see how it goes. So come up and stand. And as you're standing, notice how you're breathing. And you don't have to get lost in any sort of micro details about it. Notice what your breathing feels like as you stand there. And notice if you feel more movement in your chest or in your abdomen. Now, if you're comfortable to close your eyes while you're standing, then do so. And for a moment, think about or feel the kind of effort you notice in standing. And in particular, what do you notice about your belly and your back? Now, some of you might already be thinking, I don't feel anything in my belly or in my back, and that's also very important to notice. You can leave that and take a little walk around whatever space you have there and continue to observe your breathing as you're walking. And again, this sense of where you have your stability. So maybe that shows up in your belly and your back, and maybe it doesn't at all. Maybe you feel like the thing that stops you from falling over is somewhere else. So where do you get your strength or stability to walk around the room? File the information away and come lay down on your back. And have your legs long and your arms by your sides. And if that gives you any kind of unpleasant or uncomfortable feeling around your back or anywhere else for that matter, then keep your knees bent and your feet standing. And now take a few moments to observe yourself. Notice what kind of relationship you have with yourself today. And know that as we get going in the lesson and I ask you to do different movements, the crux of what we're doing is still what you're doing right now. And the learning happens in your openness to pay attention to yourself. Now, notice the parts of you that are touching the floor. And you'll probably see that there's some kind of, you could consider it a pattern or a shape. Maybe on one side of you, parts of you touch the floor where they don't on the other side. And the more you pay attention to that, you might discover that there's more and more detail. And then notice the parts of yourself along the back of you that don't touch the floor. It could be interesting to note if you tend to make a story as you make discoveries, or if you're more inclined to observe. The other thing to note is how much you find yourself anticipating the next thing versus how much you feel able to stay with what's happening in the moment. Now, bring your attention back to your breathing and see what it feels like. See if there's anything different about how your breathing feels now that you're laying down. If your legs are long, you're essentially in the same position as you were when you were standing. But of course, it's a very different scenario, for your nervous system, for all of your systems. And then again, observe, in particular, do you feel like you're breathing more into your chest or more into your abdomen? And then try a few times inflating your chest as you breathe in and trying to deflate it as you breathe out. And try not to be really good at doing it. Try to just observe what it feels like without actually pushing that hard or going to your full ability. And some of you might find that it feels very natural and very familiar. And some of you might find that it's awkward or challenging, maybe even uncomfortable. So continue, if you will, expanding your chest, which could include the sides of you and could even wrap around toward the back of you. And then when you exhale, see if you could just slightly exaggerate it so you make that part of you a bit smaller. See what you notice about your abdomen. And then just a few times, try it the opposite so that you expand your chest as you're breathing out. And you see if you could compress your chest as you're breathing in, just slightly. How could you expand your chest, maybe forward, maybe to the sides, maybe back toward the floor as you're breathing out? And see if there's something you're doing with your abdomen that is somehow interfering, making it more difficult to move your chest. Okay, now leave that, bend your knees, stand your feet, and notice if the parts of you that are touching the floor changes when you have your legs in this organization. And now bring your attention to your belly and see if you can inflate your belly kind of like a balloon as you take your air in. And then as you're breathing out, could you deflate the balloon a little bit? So just a slight contraction of your abdomen. Does your chest change or does it feel fairly fixed? And then just a few times try it the opposite way. So as you are breathing in, you'll make your abdomen small. And as you're breathing out, you'll puff your abdomen out big. And of course, what we're doing is you're helping yourself tune into your own unconscious habits that you likely have around your breathing. By just seeing in this little container, which one, what's your favorite? Which one fits you the best? And it's the same question about your chest, right? As I'm directing you to do something with your breathing and with your abdominal structure, what do you notice about your chest? And what's incredible is the influence of how you breathe on how you use your core, the big C, in supporting yourself. So let's start to peel back the layers on that. Lengthen out your legs, take a rest for a couple moments, give your brain a break. Now, as you're laying there with your legs long, keep your right leg long as it is, but lift your leg away from the floor and bring it back down. Yeah, just lift your whole straight right leg up and bring it back down. Yeah. And, you know, if you're a yoga person, Pilates person, this is a movement you probably do a lot in some kind of fitness class. So it's actually more challenging for you to feel what you're doing, right? If it's automatic. So maybe it means that you do less, you lift it less high or less strong. But try to get some kind of sense of how you breathe when you lift your leg and how you use your back and your belly. And then compare it. You can go at your own pace. Compare how it is to lift and lower your left leg. Is that different at all? Where do you get the strength? Can you feel where the strength comes from? Most importantly is, what are you doing with your breathing? Do you find it easier to lift your leg if you breathe in or if you breathe out? Leave it. Bend your knees, stand your feet again. And now interlace your fingers behind your head and point your two elbows toward the ceiling so that your hands and your forearms are making like a sling or a basket behind your head. Now just keep your hands and head like that and take a nice breath into your abdomen, fill your abdomen up, and lift your head. This is a perfect illustration of why we don't want to just be blindly doing a thing. We actually want to know what we're doing. So feel right now, keep your elbows out to the side and lift your head away from the floor. And notice what that feels like in your back. Notice what it feels like in your neck. And then try it a few times with your elbows looking at the ceiling. Now, I'm not suggesting that one's better, but they're different. And maybe at this point, that's not something that you can quite detect yet. So you will have to take my word for it. But just check and see if there's any kind of difference you notice in how you lift your head depending on the position of your arms. And then as we continue our study, you're going to have your arms forward, your elbows forward, because it changes the way that you use your back. So now continue what you're just doing, which is lift your head as you breathe in and expand your belly. Okay, and then just pause for a moment. You can rest your elbows. And notice how you're breathing. Now I want you to try it again. Elbows forward, lift your head. But this time, as you breathe in, you're going to expand your chest and lift your head. Can you expand your chest, breathe into your chest as you lift your head? Leave it, lengthen out your legs for a second, bring your arms down. Notice the way that your back is making contact with the floor. And notice how long your rib cage feels along the back of you. See if you can sense where your bottom ribs, your floating ribs, where your floating ribs are, how far down your back. And then bend your knees, stand your feet again. Interlace your fingers behind your head and point your elbows forward. And this time, expand your abdomen forward as you breathe out and lift your head. And does that feel familiar? Does that feel awkward? What kind of strength do you get when you press your abdomen forward, breathe out, and lift your head? Okay, and pause for a second. And try it to bring your abdomen back as you breathe out and lift your head. Can you empty out your abdomen with your exhalation and lift your head and see if you can feel what that feels like for you? Can you start to get a sense of which variation is the least amount of effort? Now I'm going to give you a moment on your own to do some research and to find out for yourself if you were doing the world's best sit-up, you wanted to lift your head, where do you feel the most strength? Is your abdomen big or small? Is your chest big or small? Do you breathe in or do you breathe out? Just take a couple moments, do some research. And as you're researching, definitely notice if your research is influenced by some information that you've gained in the past. I know as a former yoga teacher, yoga addict, I definitely used my core strength in a very specific way and definitely thought that it was the right way. Good. Leave it for now. Lengthen out your legs, bring your arms down. Check the way that you're laying on the floor, the parts of you that are touching the floor, the parts of you that are not touching the floor, and notice if there's any change. And then bend your knees, stand your feet, interlace your fingers behind your head. And a few more times, lift your head and point your elbows toward your knees. And feel which part of your back goes down into the floor. Okay, and then let your head down and bring your right knee into your chest. Hold on just below the kneecap with your left hand and keep your right hand behind your head. Now you're going to keep doing the same thing. You're going to point your right elbow toward your right knee, lift your head, and then lower your head back down. And make sure when you lower your head down, you actually take a pause so that whatever's contracting can uncontract. And then start again. And I'm going to direct you to breathe out as you lift your head and point your elbow toward your knee, even if that wouldn't be your first choice. I'm going to direct you to do that. And I'm going to leave it to you to play with as you're breathing out. What's the difference in pushing your belly forward or pulling your belly back as you breathe out and bring your elbow and your knee toward each other? Okay, and then just pause for a second. Stand both your feet, rest your arms. And then switch hands, but still bring your right knee into your chest. So what does that mean? Now you hold on to your right knee with your right hand, your left hand behind your head, left elbow faces the ceiling, still the same knee. So a moment ago, I want you to understand what you're doing. A moment ago, you brought your right elbow towards your right knee, and that did something to your back. Now you're bringing your left elbow towards your right knee, and that does something different to your back. So go ahead and see what happens. Breathe out, point your left elbow in the direction of your right knee. Try not to do your best work and get up there as much as you can. Try to feel the way that you're using your back. Feel the way that you're using your breathing. And if you'd like, on this side, you can play with it again and see what difference does it make for you if you press your abdomen forward or if you draw your abdomen back when you're breathing out. There isn't a secret right answer. It's knowing that there's a fundamental difference in the way that you create strength. Good. Leave it. Lengthen out your legs. Bring your arms down. Feel your contact with the floor. In particular, from your pelvis to your shoulder on the right and the left. And do a quick experiment of lifting your right leg and bringing it back down. And then lift your left leg and bring it back down. And see if you notice a difference in how you do that. Keep your leg straight. Just like we did at the very beginning. Just lift your leg once with the right, once with the left, and see if you notice any difference in the feeling of your back. And again, take note, do you press your belly forward or do you pull your belly in? And then leave it, bend your knees, stand your feet again. Put one hand right on the top of your chest below your collarbones. And put the other hand on your side ribs, your low side ribs. And then breathe naturally into your chest. And pay attention to the movement. So one hand is taking the shape of your side ribs, low side ribs, and one hand is taking the shape of your front upper ribs. And what you might start to discover is that even with one very gentle, simple inhale, the movement of your bottom ribs is different than the movement of your top ribs. And then rest your arms by your sides and take a few more breaths and see if you can still feel the difference of movement in your ribs without touching them. Where does your rib cage open to the side, and where does it feel like it opens more forward? Hold on to your left knee with your right hand. Put your left hand behind your head. And feel the way that your rib cage changes as you breathe out and lift your elbow towards your knee. And then lower your head and let your air come in again. And see if you can feel which part of the back of your rib cage you're leaning on. Now, some of you are shortening your left side. So let's try to do that on purpose. See if you could cinch up your left side a little bit as you bring your elbow and knee closer together. So you make kind of a C curve in your spine. And that already tells you something about your core organization. And if you tend toward one sort of movement in your core, it's going to suggest that you probably have more strength or habitual use in that area. So now see if you can not do that. See if you can bring your elbow directly forward and your knee directly toward your elbow. Can you tell the difference in how you use yourself, if you're cinching your side or if you're not? Okay, and then pause for a second, stand your feet, rest your arms. So the muscles in the front of you, your flexors, are what you use in order to do something like a crunch, right? To make yourself smaller in the front. But what's interesting is that the only way that the front of you can get smaller is if the back of you is willing to lengthen. And unfortunately for most of us, either because we sit too much or because we have a fitness practice that tightens our back too much, the back of us, our extensors, are not able to release. And there has to be this relationship of your flexors and your extensors in order to have functional use of your quote unquote core. Otherwise, if you have those, the quote unquote beautiful washboard abs, flat abs, it suggests that you're probably limiting not just your own mobility for rotation and side bending, but your own capacity to breathe. So now this time, take your left knee with your left hand and put your right hand behind your head. And point your right elbow in the direction of your left knee as you breathe out. Bring your head down. Stand your feet. Hold on to your imaginary barbell in front of your chest. Now lift your chest as you lift the bar up to the ceiling. Keep your head on the floor. Just imagine, notice the way that your back feels when you lift your chest and you lift something. You're lifting your best friend up toward the ceiling. Take the same arrangement. Hold on to your left knee with your left hand. Put your right hand behind your head. And now when you bring your right elbow towards your left knee, do that same thing with your chest. Lift your chest as you bring your elbow towards your knee. What if you don't do that? what if you do the opposite with your chest? What if you soften your chest as you're lifting your head? Look at your knee and try to do it without holding your breath, right? Breathe out, look at your knee, and soften your chest. There's nothing about doing it stronger. There's nothing about doing it harder. There's nothing about getting closer. It's a feeling in your chest in accordance with your breathing. Bring your legs down, bring your arms down. What do you feel? Now bend your knees, stand your feet again. Take hold of your right knee with your right hand. Put your left hand behind your head. This is where we started. Now point your elbow toward the ceiling. And just a few times, again, don't do your best work, right? No matter how intense I get about the instructions, don't do your best work. A few times, let your air come out. See if you can let your chest soften and bring your elbow toward your knee. And pay attention to the part of your back that goes into the floor. Now, can you feel a difference of how your back goes into the floor? So you've kind of got the back of your head, you kind of got the side of your head. Your elbow's still looking at the ceiling. Everything else is the same, except you're looking to the right as you bring your left elbow towards your right knee. What's different in the way your back presses into the floor if when you lift your elbow, your face is facing forward, or if your face is facing to the right? Switch sides. Bring your foot down. Bring your left knee, hold onto your left knee with your left hand. Put your right hand behind your head. See what it feels like on this side to bring your elbow and knee toward each other. Not to touch them, just to feel the way that your back goes into the floor, the way your chest softens, and the way your air comes out. Some of you aren't pausing at all when you lower back down, and it means you're not going to release. You're just going to stay in automatic mode, right? And then you're just doing a fitness class. So I know it's like instructions, and it feels like a sit-up, and it seems like a challenge, but it's really a way for you to observe yourself. So if it's too much happening, take a break, rest, come back when you're ready to feel again. Really, it's a process. Now, if you're exploring what it's like to bring your elbow towards your knee with your face forward, compare that. Do you use your back differently if your face is facing the left and you're holding on to the back of your head, but kind of the left side of your head? Which part of your rib cage do you lean on? Okay, and then pause again and keep your feet standing. Rest your arms. And notice the feeling of your breathing. Now this time, put your left hand behind your head and hold on to your right foot with your right hand. Maybe you could hold on to your right big toe. You can interlace your first and second finger between your big toe and your second toe. So you can hold on to your right big toe with your right hand. Your left hand's behind your head. Mm-hmm. And now as you lift your head, same way, breathing out, softening your chest, lift your foot up toward the ceiling. What part of your back ribs do you lean on now? And then switch hands, but same foot. So hold on to your left foot with your left hand, left big toe with your left hand, right hand behind your head. Same foot, just different hands. Same foot, just different hands. And see what it's like on this side as you breathe out to lightly lift your head and lift your foot up toward the ceiling. Whatever part of your back you're pressing, can you exaggerate it? Can you press it a little bit more? Okay, and then just pause a moment, stand your 2 feet. Try it with your right hand behind your head. Hold on to your right big toe with your left hand. Now, this time, use your back as the initiation. So feel the part of your back that you're going to use to lift your head and to lift your foot. And start there. Press that part of your back down into the floor. Let your air come out nicely. Of course, it doesn't matter how high your foot or your head lift. But exaggerate. However your back is pushing into the floor, press it. Press it there. Just gently. And then use the same foot, but switch your hands again. And I said that quickly, but you do it at your own time. If you need to pause for a moment, of course, pause. That's okay, lovely. Let it go. Lengthen yourself out. Bring your legs down, arms down. Check that in your excitement you haven't accidentally started to tighten somewhere else. Roll your head a bit left and right. Move your jaw and your tongue around. Make sure you're not tightening. And then again, take a couple moments resting here to see yourself on the floor. And then finally, this time, bend your knees and stand your feet. And take hold of both of your knees with both of your hands. And let your knees be wide apart, as wide as they fall comfortably. Now, keep your head on the floor and do a movement like you've been doing of bringing your knees in the direction of your head by way of pressing your ribs, your back ribs, lightly into the floor. So see, where could you, and you can experiment a bit, right? See if you press your ribs here or there. Does anything change in the way that you can bring your legs towards your chest? Maybe you bring your legs more to the right or more to the left. Just experiment. Bring your 2 knees in until you feel your bum lifts a little bit away from the floor. In fact, how about this? What if you imagine that you're lifting your tailbone to the ceiling? Can you lift your tailbone? There's a string on your tailbone. So what happens to your head when you do this? What happens to your neck? Are you lifting your chest or are you dropping your chest? Okay. Now see what happens if, as you bring your knees toward your chest, you drop your chin and you try to look at your own belly button. As you breathe out, lift your head, bring your knees in toward your shoulders. Try not to pull with your arms. Try to reduce the effort and feel your back. Which part of your back can you press into the floor? What happens to the front of your rib cage? Can you tell the difference between if you lift your front ribs or if you drop your front ribs? Do you know the difference between those two feelings? Last variation, stand your 2 feet, take a pause for a moment. Let's see how free you can be in the balance between the front of you and the back of you. Take hold of your, let's say your left knee with your left hand, right hand behind your head. Now just lift your head a little bit, as much as you can lift it without straining, that you can keep it lifted. And then from this point, you're just going to micro bring your knee and elbow a little bit closer together and then back where you are, a little bit closer together, back where you are. And notice if you're clenching your teeth or if you're clamping down somewhere. It's likely your habit. So see if you can be open to doing things a little bit differently, even if it doesn't feel like what you're used to it feeling like. So you keep yourself lifted, but you just go close, far, close, far, close, far, just like a little, like as though there was an elastic band that went from your throat to your pubic bone in the front and from your neck to your sacrum in the back. And those two elastic bands, we're just going to stretch, release, stretch, release. And whenever you're ready, you can try that on the other side. So you'll have your right hand on your right knee, your left hand behind your head. You'll lift your head just a comfortable amount, lift your knee toward you a comfortable amount, and then just see if you can go close, far, but just like a millimeter. Great, just do it a few times and then let it go. Lengthen out your legs, bring your arms down. And notice the way that you're making contact with the floor. A fundamental piece about being in practice with the Feldenkrais method is that you learn how to do things in an effortless way. It's not something you can just do at the beginning. That's literally what we learn how to do. We learn, oh my God, I have this chronic contraction. And every time I do my thing, I'm contracting like that. And with time, you learn how to not have to do that. You learn that there's more possibilities. But the reason I'm saying this is because, especially with a lesson like this, it's not uncommon that you'll feel a little bit sore. And it's likely because you're doing a repetitive movement in a way that's straining you because you haven't yet figured out how to not do that, right? So that's an integral thing, part of what we do here is learn how to use less contraction, less effort, and more function. So we have a functional kind of strength instead of a rigid kind of strength. Yeah? So retest where we started. As you lay there, lift your right leg away from the floor and bring it back down. See if that feels different now. And you feel the way that movement travels up your back. Notice the way that you feel your belly and your back in relationship to one another. And then go ahead, compare it to your left leg, see what it's like. See if you notice any differences in how that is. And again, it's a practice. So if you're new to this practice and you're thinking, I don't know what's going on, I don't feel differences, I'm sorry to say that at the beginning, it's all about learning to feel different. So then leave it and take another few moments. Of course, if you need to change your position and resting, then rest comfortably. And when you're ready, you will come back to standing and come back to walking around. Pay attention to what feels different for you in standing, in walking. I'll leave you to your experience. Rest, process, and I hope to see you again.